There are places on this earth where the weight of questions becomes almost physical, where the air itself seems to press against your chest with the accumulated mass of unanswered inquiries. The Serapeum of Saqqara is such a place. Most visitors to Egypt never see it. They flow like water toward the pyramids at Giza, toward the painted tombs in the Valley of the Kings, toward the temples that line the Nile like beads on an ancient string. But those who seek the genuine mysteries, those who hunger for evidence rather than spectacle, eventually find their way to a nondescript entrance in the Saqqara necropolis, 17 miles south of Cairo. Welcome back to Whispered Chronicles, Echoes of Forgotten Lore. In our last journey, we followed the echoes of a lost world to the frozen ends of the earth. We saw where they went, and we felt the pulse of what they left behind. But Antarctica was only the map. It was the blueprint of a global presence. Today we move from the where to the how. If the Piri race map was a ghost story told in ink, then what lies beneath the sands of Saqqara is the physical evidence of the haunting. We are leaving the ice of the south for the heat of the desert to look at a technology that should not exist. Precision that defies our tools and a scale that dwarfs our history. It is time to look at the work of the architects. Let us descend into the abyss of the Serapeum. The journey begins in heat. The kind of heat that transforms distance into something wavering and uncertain. The desert here is not the romantic ocean of dunes that appears in films. It is hard-packed limestone dust and broken rock, stretching toward a horizon that shimmers with the promise of water that will never arrive. The sun does not warm this landscape, it punishes it. You descend. The entrance is modest, almost deliberately unimpressive. A doorway cut into the earth, stairs leading down into geology, and with each step downward, the temperature drops. The light changes. The sounds of the surface world, the wind across stone, the distant calls of vendors and guides. All of it fades into a silence so complete it seems to have texture. By the time you reach the main gallery, you have passed through a membrane between worlds. The darkness here is not merely the absence of light, it is a presence. It presses against your flashlight beam, swallowing it whole just a few feet from the source. The air is cool, almost cold, carrying the mineral scent of limestone and something else, something harder to define. Antiquity, perhaps? Or simply the smell of questions that have waited thousands of years for answers. And then you see them. The boxes. 24 granite monoliths, arranged in niches along both sides of a tunnel that extends into darkness. Each one carved from a single block of Aswan red or black granite. Each one weighing between 70 and 100 tons. Each one fitted with a lid that weighs another 30 tons. Each one polished to a degree that makes your reflection visible even in the dim beam of artificial light. The first response is visceral, physical. Your brain attempts to process the scale and simply refuses. These are not objects that belong underground. They are not objects that belong anywhere humans can move them. And yet here they are, fitted into niches carved specifically to receive them. With clearances so tight that in some cases you cannot slide a piece of paper between the box and the surrounding rock, the orthodox explanation is straightforward. These are sarcophagi, burial chambers, for the sacred Apis bulls of ancient Egypt. The cult of Apis was real, well documented in the dynastic period. The bulls were mummified, honored, treated as living embodiments of the god Ptah, and when they died, according to the standard narrative, they were interred here in these massive granite boxes, in this lightless catacomb beneath the desert. But that explanation, like so many orthodox explanations, dissolves under scrutiny. Let us begin with the physics. Aswan granite comes from quarries 500 miles to the south. Moving a 100-ton block of stone 500 miles is not simply difficult with Bronze Age technology. It approaches the impossible. The logistics alone stagger the imagination. The Nile could carry the weight, certainly, but loading such a mass onto a barge, transporting it without capsizing, then unloading it and moving it across 17 miles of desert to Saqqara, all of this requires engineering that leaves no margin for error, and then comes the descent. These boxes did not begin their existence underground. They were brought down, through tunnels barely wider than the boxes themselves. lowered into niches where the clearance, in some cases, measures less than 4 inches on either side. Think about that dimension. 4 inches. With 100 tons of granite, one miscalculation, one shift in weight distribution, and the box would wedge itself immovably in the tunnel, a permanent monument to hubris. The precision required is not ancient, it is modern. It is the precision of a Swiss watchmaker working in stone. But the exterior dimensions, as impressive as they are, tell only half the story. Run your hand along the inside of one of these boxes. The surface is not simply smooth, it is mirror flat. When Egyptologists first measured the interior surfaces using modern precision instruments, they discovered something that should not exist in an artifact allegedly created with copper chisels and pounding stones. The variance across the entire interior surface, wall to wall, corner to corner, measures in the thousandths of an inch. To understand what this means, you need to understand modern machining. A surface plate, the kind used to calibrate precision instruments in aerospace manufacturing, is considered exceptionally flat if it maintains tolerances within 5/10,000ths of an inch across its surface. These granite boxes, allegedly carved by a civilization that had not yet discovered iron, match or exceed that specification. This is not craft. This is machine work. The corners tell the same story, perfect right angles, measured and verified with modern tools. The walls parallel to tolerances that would satisfy a modern quality control engineer. And perhaps most remarkably, many of these boxes show evidence of a tool mark pattern that suggests not hand carving but some form of rotary cutting. Smooth, regular curves that sweep across the granite surface in arcs that no chisel could produce. Ask yourself this question. Why would anyone in any historical period invest such precision in a tomb for an animal? Even if we grant that the API's bull was sacred, even if we accept the religious significance, the level of exactitude embodied in these boxes serves no ceremonial purpose. A coffin carved to within 1/100th of an inch would serve the same ritual function as one carved to within 1,000th. The additional precision buys nothing in terms of symbolism or sanctity, unless precision itself was the point. Lest these boxes were never intended as tombs at all. The hieroglyphics present another problem, one that the Orthodox narrative prefers to gloss over. Only a handful of the 24 boxes bear any inscription whatsoever. And those inscriptions that do exist are crude, shallow, carved with obvious haste and little skill. They sit on the surface of the polished granite like graffiti on a monument, which is precisely what they may be. The glyphs claim the boxes for various API's bulls, provide dates in the 19th dynasty, assert ownership and purpose. But the quality of the carving bears no relationship to the quality of the boxes themselves. It is the difference between a masterwork and a child's scrawl. And in archaeology, when you find evidence of two radically different skill levels in the same artifact, the explanation is usually chronological. The crude work came later, added by people who found the boxes and claimed them, repurposing objects they did not create and whose original function they did not understand. The dynastic Egyptians in this reading were not the builders, they were the inheritors. They found these precision instruments of an unknown purpose, and in the absence of understanding, declared them tombs. They carved their claims onto the surface and moved on, leaving the real mystery untouched beneath their shallow explanations. And then there is the matter of light, or rather, the absence of light. The ceilings of the Serapeum tunnels are bare limestone, and they are clean. There is no soot, no carbon residue from torches or oil lamps. The underground chambers where these 100-ton boxes were somehow maneuvered into niches with 4-inch tolerances show no evidence of the illumination that such work would require. This is not a minor detail. Carving granite to precision tolerances requires visibility. Moving massive objects through narrow passages requires coordination, which requires sight. Polishing stone to a mirror finish requires constant visual feedback, the ability to assess the surface at every stage of the process. And yet the physical evidence suggests all of this was accomplished in total darkness. The orthodox explanation involves mirrors. Sunlight reflected down through the tunnels in some elaborate configuration that left no trace of its existence. But engineering such a system would itself require precision and sophistication, arguably greater than simply providing artificial light. and it still fails to explain the absence of any soot whatsoever. As if the builders of the Serapeum had access to light sources that produced no combustion byproducts, or as if they did not need light at all. Which brings us to the question of purpose. If these are not tombs, what are they? Granite is primarily composed of quartz, feldspar, and mica. Quartz is piezoelectric. When placed under mechanical stress, it generates an electric charge. When vibrated at specific frequencies, it can maintain those frequencies with extraordinary stability. Which is why quartz crystals form the heart of every modern timepiece and radio transmitter. Now consider the configuration of the Serapeum boxes. Massive granite containers with lids that weigh 30 tons. When such a lid is placed on such a box, the pressure alone, distributed across the contact surface, would be sufficient to generate piezoelectric effects in the quartz-rich granite. Add to this the resonant properties of precisely machined stone chambers. The way they would amplify and sustain specific acoustic frequencies, and you begin to see the outline of a different possibility. Not tombs, chambers, not burial sites, generators. The precision that seems so excessive for a sarcophagus makes perfect sense for a resonant cavity designed to produce and maintain specific frequencies. The mirror-flat interior surfaces would minimize energy loss, allowing vibrations to propagate without interference. The massive scale would provide stability, preventing the chambers from shifting or detuning. And the underground location would isolate the system from surface vibrations, from wind and temperature fluctuations, from all the variables that would compromise a precision instrument. We do not know what frequencies they generated or for what purpose. We do not know how they were powered or what mechanism triggered their activation. But the hypothesis fits the evidence in ways that the tomb theory simply cannot match. It explains the precision, it explains the scale, it explains the lack of decorative elements, the functional minimalism of the design. It explains why someone would carve granite to tolerances measured in thousandths of an inch, and then lower those carvings into the earth where almost no one would ever see them, because they were never meant to be seen. They were meant to function. This is not an isolated mystery. The precision we find at the Serapeum appears throughout the ancient world, in contexts that orthodox chronology cannot comfortably accommodate. The H-blocks at Pumapunku in Bolivia machined to tolerances that rival modern metalwork, fitted together with no mortar and no gaps. The foundation stones of Baalbek in Lebanon, including the largest cut stone on earth, a single block weighing an estimated 1,650 tons. The polygonal masonry of Cusco and Ollantaytambo, where multi-ton stones of irregular shape fit together so perfectly that a razor blade cannot slide between them. In every case, we find the same signature, precision that exceeds the supposed capabilities of the culture by orders of magnitude, scale that defies the available technology, purposes that remain fundamentally unclear, obscured by later civilizations who found these works and claimed them without understanding them. We are confronting evidence of a technological standard, a set of capabilities deployed across vast distances, across cultures with no acknowledged contact, across time periods separated by thousands of years. And the most parsimonious explanation, the one that requires the fewest assumptions, is that we are looking at remnants of something older. In our previous investigation, we examined the Peary race map and its impossible knowledge of Antarctica's coastline beneath the ice. We asked how such a map could exist without a global maritime civilization possessing both the technology to conduct such surveys and the organizational capacity to coordinate them across vast distances. The Serapeum provides a complementary data point. If the architects could map Antarctica, they could certainly machine granite. If they possessed the ability to conduct continental-scale cartography, they possess the ability to quarry, transport, and precisely shape 100-ton monoliths. We are not looking at isolated anomalies. We are looking at fragments of a coherent whole, scattered across geography and time by some catastrophic interruption that broke the continuity of transmission. The maps survived as copies of copies, their original purpose forgotten, but their data intact. The structures survived as physical objects too massive to destroy, repurposed by successor cultures who marveled at them but could not replicate them. In between these fragments, across the gap of missing evidence, we can begin to perceive the outline of what was lost. A global civilization. Not global in the modern sense of political unity, but global in the sense of technological standardization, of shared knowledge, of capabilities deployed on every continent, a civilization that understood precision engineering at a level we have only recently reattained, civilization that, for reasons we can only speculate about, vanished so completely that its successors retained only myths, only stories of golden ages and fallen kingdoms, only enigmatic structures whose purpose had become opaque. The Janus threshold. The boundary between what came before and what came after, named for the Roman god of doorways, of transitions, of looking simultaneously forward and backward. We stand at that threshold now, looking back through the keyhole of evidence at something vast and precisely engineered, at a technical capability that modern archaeology has systematically underestimated because it contradicts the narrative of linear progress. But the boxes remain. 70 to 100 tons each, polished to thousandths of an inch, fitted into niches with 4-inch clearances, carved with techniques that leave no tool marks compatible with Bronze Age implements, bearing crude hieroglyphs that claim ownership but cannot claim authorship. The Serapeum does not whisper its secrets, shouts them into the silence of its lightless tunnels. But we have been trained not to hear, conditioned to accept explanations that preserve the comfort of our chronological assumptions, rather than confront the implications of the evidence. Consider what it means if we are wrong about the timeline. If human civilization did not begin in Mesopotamia 5,000 years ago and progress linearly to the present, if instead we are living in a recovery period, climbing back toward capabilities that were once achieved and then lost, if the great works we attribute to Bronze Age pharaohs and stone tool cultures are in fact the remnants of something much older, much more sophisticated, repurposed and claimed by people who found them already ancient, the implications cascade. Our understanding of human potential shifts. Our assumptions about technological development require revision. The story we tell ourselves about who we are and where we came from cracks along 1,000 fault lines. But those implications, unsettling as they are, fit the evidence better than the alternative. They make sense of the precision, make sense of the scale, and make sense of the global distribution of anomalous structures that share engineering principles despite emerging from supposedly independent cultures with no means of communication. The architects left their signature in stone, massive, precise, functional. The signature is still legible, still measurable, still waiting for us to acknowledge what it says. That we are not the first. That the summit we are climbing toward may in fact be a summit that others reached before us. History is not a line but a cycle. And we are somewhere in the middle of a pattern that has repeated itself in ways we are only beginning to comprehend. The granite boxes of the Serapeum will outlast our theories about them. They will still be here, fitted perfectly into their niches, polished to impossible tolerances. When the current paradigm finally collapses under the weight of its own contradictions, and perhaps then, standing in the cool darkness of those underground galleries, we will finally ask the right questions. Not who were the dynastic Egyptians, but who came before them. Not how did they bury their bulls, but what technology did they lose. Not what did these boxes contain, but what did they generate. The abyss beneath us is deeper than we imagined. The precision of what was lost is greater than we have been willing to admit. The threshold we stand upon, the Janus point between forgetting and remembering, is narrower and more precarious than the 4-inch gap between a 100-ton box and the stone walls that somehow, impossibly received it into darkness. Thank you for descending into the silence with me today. Exploring these echoes of forgotten lore is a journey we take together. And your curiosity is the light that keeps these shadows at bay. If this investigation resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe and join our chronicle. Every thought you leave in the comments adds a new thread to the tapestry we are weaving here. But as we return to the surface, remember, the past is never truly behind us. It is beneath us. It is waiting. Keep searching, keep questioning, and never let the comfort of a simple answer stop you from seeing the truth. Take care of yourselves. As always, stay safe.